Well, thanks for joining us here on our next adventure. This next adventure brings us out to several small towns a little north of Dallas. It's regarding one of the most brutal crimes probably that's happened here in the Dallas area back in 1980, June 13th to be exact. It's the brutal murder of one Betty Gore. So we're going to go take a look at some of the locations, tell you the story, kind of what led up to that, and at the end of this, draw your own conclusions. Drop them down in the comments. So let's get started.
News travels fast in a small town, especially when it's bad news.
We've been out of town. We had our dog without it. Oh my God. Oh, that's terrible.
Almost everyone has the latest version of the latest rumor, but Wiley's police chief tells us he doesn't have much of anything. Sometime between 9:30 Friday morning and 10:30 that night, when a neighbor found her body, a 30-year-old schoolteacher was murdered, hacked to death with an axe from her own garage. Betty Gore's husband was out of town, her year-old baby asleep in another room. Police found a few footprints, but don't think they'll help much. They found no signs of a break-in or robbery. Neighbors are confused and stunned. Several told me they didn't see or hear anything unusual yesterday. Although the kids were outside playing, the doors and windows were open.
My doors will be locked from now on, and this is a great shock. And of course, since it happened so close to home, it is a little more scary.
I'm in maintenance with a school, and I knew the lady. I don't think she had any enemies. Everybody loved her. And it's just some tragic thing that some sick person has come along and did that I hope they find.
Police hope so too, but tell us so far they have few clues, no suspects. And several people in this quiet, friendly town, people who normally don't even lock their doors, tell us tonight they'll sleep with shotguns by their beds. Karen Parfit, Channel 5 Action News, Wiley.
All right, folks, our first destination brings us right here. As you can see right behind me, Good Shepherd United Methodist Church. But in 1977, it was actually called the First United Church, right here in Lucas. This church is where it all started. So just a little brief summary on the Montgomerys. They moved here to Collin County back in 1977, and right here is where they attended church. It's also right here where Candy became very close friends with Betty Gore. So let's go ahead and fast forward the story just a little bit. So Candy had a very boring life. There's nothing going on with her husband at home, not satisfied, just basically bored out of her mind. So here at this church, this is where Candy knew that very precise moment. She knew she wanted to have an affair, and she wanted to have it with Betty's husband, Alan Gore. She knew it was going to be Alan because back in 1978, they were both on the church volleyball team. They played right here, and they both bumped into each other while going for the ball at the same time, and that's when she knew that she wanted to have that affair with Alan. So one night, after choir practice, Alan was getting into his car right here in this parking lot. Well, Candy saw him getting into his car. She approached the passenger side and opened the door, went ahead and sat down. She confessed to Alan that she was thinking about him a lot. She was very attracted to him, and she just wanted him to know this. Now, after she confessed that to Alan, she went ahead and jumped right out of that car and across the parking lot, got in her car and took off. Alan, all he could do was sit there shocked, but yet he was kind of flattered. A week or so later, after that choir practice began, Candy went ahead and asked him if he'd be interested in having an affair. Alan was hesitant and very reluctant to do so. It took him a while to convince himself, yeah, that affair sounds good. Our next stop here in this bizarre little love triangle, right here in Richardson, Texas, we're in another parking lot. This building in front of me here used to be called Rockwell International. This is where Alan worked. And it's right here in this very parking lot. It's where Candy came to pick up Alan for lunch. Out from there, they went to some local restaurant here in the area in order to discuss the potential affair and the rules and hazards that it could cause. Now, as long as they limited that affair to nothing but sex, well, they thought they'd be safe. No. All right, well, our next stop is taking us out here to Fairview, Texas. We're headed to Candy and Pat Montgomery's home. And they live out here in a real wooded area of Fairview. So this part of the story goes, Candy invited Alan over to her house for lunch while Pat was away at work. Of course, she fixed her famous lasagna that day. They proceeded to go over the pros and cons of this potential affair, writing everything out on sticky notes, on paper. But still, no decision from Alan was made that day. Well, a few days later, Alan called Candy at her house, told her he wanted to go ahead and do it. So it was set, ready to go. They set the date for the affair to begin December the 12th, 1978. Right there is the home of Candy and Pat Montgomery. So once that affair was to get underway, Candy found a real sleazy motel. It was called the Continental Inn. And as you can hear from all the commotion, we're by a major highway. Well, that Continental Inn was on the other side of US Highway 75 right behind me. Well, the Continental Inn is no longer around, so we can't go over there and show you anything. It's long gone. And at that time, though, it was $29 per night for a room. Candy was in that Continental Inn all decked out in her nightgown, even prepared a nice homemade lunch for her and Alan. Now, after that first meeting at the Continental, they wanted some more. They wanted to continue with that affair. Well, a week or so later, Candy found an even cheaper, some say even sleazier, motel called the Como. You see it right here in Richardson, Texas. At that time, this place was $23.50 per night. Now, it was right here. This is where Candy and Alan did spend most of their time together, always eating some of Candy's homemade lunches. Continued their affair for several months right here. And it was also here that Candy confessed to Alan that she thought she was getting in too deep and started to develop feelings. Well, Alan didn't doubt it that he was capable of falling in love with someone like Candy, but for the time being, he just needed her. They had something special after all. Well, in early June, he told Candy he thought they should discontinue the affair for a while so that he could be available for Betty at all times due to her recent pregnancy. Well, Candy went ahead and agreed. And Alan told Candy that it had become way too close. He was afraid he'd lost his love for Betty. That was never part of the agreement. Next up on the list, come to this building right here. Now, it's probably nothing to look at, nothing to do cartwheels over. It's kind of blah, boring. We had to come here because it's part of the story. So this building right here used to be ECS Telecommunications. This is where Alan came after he quit Rockwell International. He joined this tiny new company. Now, Alan had some good friends here, and the only way for him to advance would be able to take jobs that require him to travel extensively, leaving Betty alone and depressed at times. Now, in order to patch up their marriage, Alan and Betty decided to attend a little retreat. It's called Marriage Encounter. And that retreat, it was classified as an immersive counseling session held on weekends. After they did that, it seemed to work. Bumped up their marriage a little bit. It got a little spicy. After attending the marriage encounter, Alan then told Candy that he wanted to focus all his efforts on his marriage. And Candy really didn't like that. She had mixed emotions, so Candy and her husband, Pat, thought they would try the same thing. They too attended the marriage encounter session. Now, though they enjoyed it, they didn't have the same kind of life-changing, life-altering experience that Betty and Alan had. So both couples ended up heading into the summer of 1980 with a sense of peaceful happiness about their lives. But that would not last very long. Now the place where they had the marriage encounter, that hotel, or I should say motel, it's not around anymore, so there's really no need to seek that out because it's gone. All right, we're back here in Wiley, Texas. To be exact, it's going to be 410 Dogwood Street. It's going to be the house right in front of us here. We'll get up a little closer, but a little backstory on that brutal day. It was Friday, June 13th, 1980. Alan Gore left for a business trip to St. Paul, Minnesota. But on the way to his gate, he decided, let me call home. No answer. Well, he assumed Betty was either taking her afternoon nap or on a walk with one of their daughters named Bethany. Well, then he tried calling again when he got to his hotel room in St. Paul that night. Still no answer. Well, Alan was getting a little worried because this wasn't like Betty not to check in. So he called his neighbor, Richard Parker, which is also his real estate agent. He's the one who sold them that house right there. He asked her to, hey, can you run over there and check on Betty? Well, he knocked on the door, no answer. He then called Candy, asking if she'd seen Betty. Well, Candy stated she did see her that morning when she dropped by to pick up their daughter's bathing suit. And she told Alan Betty seemed fine. Well, around 10 o'clock that night, Alan called Richard Parker again. He asked him to check to see if Betty's car was there. Richard stated the car was there, the garage was open, and the lights were all on. Well, by this point, Alan was a little frightened. He urged Richard to get into the house any way possible. Well, two other neighbors also joined in. Richard went in the front door, and lo and behold, it was unlocked, actually. The Gore's baby was actually still in its bedroom in its crib, crying. Another neighbor named Lester made his way to the utility room. That's where he saw Betty lying in a pool of blood, dead. Happened right there in that house, 410 Dogwood Street. Well, actually, Alan did call the house phone here. The neighbor, Lester, picked up, broke the news to him. Well, it didn't take long for news to spread the next day. Everyone was calling Candy to gossip about what they heard happened to Betty in the utility room of this house. Word began to go around, but Candy began her day as if nothing happened. Alan returned home as quick as he could and was told by officers that Betty was killed with an axe. All right, folks, our final stop's taking us right here to McKinney, Texas. Right here in the downtown square. This is the old Collin County Courthouse. And this building where the trial took place for the murder of Betty Gore. Unfortunately, no such luck, because that's where the actual courtroom where the case took place, right in there. But it's a Saturday and it's locked. Normally you can get in there, but not today. But what I've seen online, it almost looks exactly the same, the courtroom, compared to back then. I mean, hasn't changed much at all, if at all. Yeah, what a shame. But yeah, right behind those doors was the trial of Candy Montgomery. So since we're not able to get into the courtroom itself, let's just plop down on these stairs inside the courthouse and I'll kind of go over the summary of what happened in that courtroom that day. It all started in October of 1980. Candy did admit she was the last person to see Betty alive. So, of course, due to that, she became the main suspect within a matter of weeks. And Alan did end up admitting to the police that he did have an affair with Candy, and that gave the police a motive for Candy to kill Betty. So they went ahead and arrested her and charged her with her murder. Of course, Candy denied the charges, of course, and was released on bail, but She also hired a lawyer that she knew from church, a man by the name of Don Crowder. He's the one who represented her. So again, like I said, in October of 1980, her trial commenced right here in this courthouse, behind those doors in front of me over there. Now, her lawyer ended up stunning everyone. He stated that Candy would plead self-defense. So Candy got up on the stand. She went over the events of June 13th, 1980, and what happened in that utility room that day. Like a typical day, she dropped by the Gore house a little bit early. She went to pick up a bathing suit and take the Gore's daughter, Alyssa, to her swimming lesson, and then they were all going to go to the movies later on. They chatted for a while, and then Betty asked Candy straight up, "Are you having an affair with Alan?" Boy, Betty's face went blank, her eyes unfocused and wide. Of course, Candy denied the affair with Alan, but Betty then asked Candy again. Well, then Candy ended up confessing. Betty rose from her chair, walked to that utility room. She re-emerged, clutching the handle of a 3-foot axe. Betty then said, "Well, don't see him again." All Candy wanted to do was get the heck out of that house because she suddenly had a sick feeling in the pit of her stomach. Something bad was going to happen here. Well, Candy then told Betty that she was sorry. All at once, Betty's rage just erupted. She shoved Candy backward into the utility room. Betty grabbed the axe, resting by the doorway, and then rushed in after her, holding it like a weapon. All Candy could say to Betty was, "Don't." And she was putting her hands on the axe as Betty moved in. Candy kept saying, "This is stupid. I don't even want Alan." They both gripped the axe firmly. Then Betty began to jerk the axe, trying to gain control of it, like a tug-of-war. "I've got to kill you," Betty said. As they grappled for control, Betty wrenched the axe violently, jerked it upward. The flat side of the blade slapped against the side of Candy's head, opening up a gash. Candy then grabbed the handle of the axe and brought the blade down on the back of Betty's head. They both struggled again to regain control of that weapon, but once Candy did grab control of it, she brought down 41 chop wounds onto Betty Gore. After that, Candy returned home, ran upstairs, took a quick shower, put on some blue tennis shoes, then just went up to pick her kids up at church as if nothing had happened that day. After hearing those words out of Candy's mouth, the courtroom went silent. A couple of days later, the jury heard the final arguments, and they reached their verdict that afternoon. Candy Montgomery was found not guilty on October 30th, 1980. The plea of self-defense, it worked. Outside, the crowds chanted, "Murderer, murderer," as Candy exited the courthouse following her acquittal.
Well, I've been here for almost the whole trial, and I can't believe it. Everybody's in shock. Well, I feel like she should be punished. For her to walk out, yeah, that's right. She was the.
She should be punished.
Because
she confessed to the murder.
I
Confessed murder, found not guilty.
I think she should have at least had a manslaughter charge. I mean, thieves who steal get larger. I mean, they get a jail sentence. Sometimes 55 years for stealing. She took a human life.
So after Candy was found not guilty, she came out those doors, walked down these very steps right here. You're going to tell in the footage, you can see that building right over there in the video of Candy walking out of this courthouse to her vehicle. For the most part, the square hasn't changed too much, but there's some new things around it, but the building structure's pretty much the same. All right, folks, this is where we have to go. We're going to end it right here in McKinney, right behind me, the town square, the courthouse. Again, make your own conclusion about this case. Do you believe Candy's story that this happened in self-defense? If so, can you justify hitting someone with an axe 41 times in self-defense? I mean, the only people who know what really happened are Candy and Betty, and one of those people are dead. So what are your conclusions? Drop them down in the comments, let me know. And if you haven't seen it, there's actually a mini-series on the events that happened with Candy and Betty. Jessica Biel plays Candy Montgomery in the Hulu series Candy, which we watched last month. It's like 5 episodes, I think. Very good. And there's also another one coming out later on this year on HBO Max. Elizabeth Olsen's going to play Candy in that one, so it's supposed to come out sometime in 2022, from what I read. And also, if you're wondering, Betty, she's not buried anywhere around here, or we definitely would have gone to pay our respects to her grave. Anyway, we'll see you next time.